My name's Zach. I'm 36 and I live in Boulder, Colorado, or I guess I should say I used to live there with my wife, Laura. We had what people around us might have called a quiet life. That kind of curated suburban calm that shows up in magazine spreads, big windows, open kitchen, quiet neighborhood where deer stroll through the backyard like they own it. It wasn't flashy, but it was ours. The house backed into the foothills surrounded by pines and aspens that turned gold in the fall. Sometimes just standing on the deck, breathing in the crisp air, I'd think, yeah, this is it. This is the kind of peace people work for. I thought I had made it. But there's always a before and an after. I didn't know it at the time, but I was living in the last day of my before. It happened in December, just after Christmas. I'd gone to Denver for work, nothing special, just a quarterly vendor check-in, 2 nights in a Marriott with stale lobby coffee and a view of a parking structure. The original plan was to drive home Friday afternoon, get back in time to help Laura put away the holiday decorations and maybe open that bottle of wine her sister had gifted us. But Thursday evening, my car started acting up. It sputtered like it was choking on air, dashboard lit up like a Christmas tree. So I figured I'd cut the trip short, get it looked at back in Boulder. Didn't even call ahead, thought I'd surprise Laura. I imagined her smile when she saw me come through the door early. Maybe we'd order Thai from that little spot we liked. Maybe I'd bring it with me. I stopped for food on the way, Penang curry for her, chicken pad Thai for me, and spring rolls we'd both end up fighting over. I even asked for extra peanut sauce, like always. It was about 2:30 a.m. when I pulled into our driveway. I remember the sound of the tires crunching lightly over fresh snow and the way the porch light flickered on from the motion sensor. Our house looked still, peaceful. From the outside, everything looked exactly how it should be. It always does until you walk through the door. Inside, it was quiet, too quiet even for that hour. Lights off, no TV humming in the background, no music playing from Laura's phone in the bathroom, which she often did when she couldn't sleep. I was taking my boots off when I noticed it, a soft glow coming from under the basement door. A warm strip of light, like a secret seeping through the cracks. That might not sound like much, but we never used the basement. Not unless we had guests or the power went out. It was more storage than anything else, boxes of old yearbooks, camping gear we never used, and the treadmill we swore we'd get back on. Something about that light made the hairs on my arms stand up. I placed the food quietly on the kitchen counter and slowly moved toward the basement door. I pressed my ear against the wood. At first, nothing. Then voices. Her laugh. Low and unguarded. I would have recognized that sound in a stadium full of people. And then a man's voice. Deep, relaxed. Not saying much, but close. Too close. I opened the door gently, just enough to peer down the stairs. I didn't step on the creaky third one. I knew this house like muscle memory. I stood frozen in the dark, just listening. Her laugh again, then his. And then, I swear to God, I heard her say something that burned into my memory like a scar. You always make me feel more seen than he ever has. Every part of me went numb. My heart didn't even race, it just stopped, cold and heavy like a rock dropped into water. I didn't go down. I didn't yell. I didn't even breathe. I closed the door, stepped back quietly, and sat in the kitchen. Just sat there, staring at the takeout containers like they were evidence from a different life. I don't know how long I waited. Could have been 5 minutes. Could have been an hour. Time warped in that moment, like the world had shifted slightly off its axis, and I was the only one who noticed. When the door creaked open, she walked out looking casual. Comfortable. A hoodie and leggings, hair tied up like she'd just come from a yoga class, not from whispering things in our basement that would rewrite everything I thought I knew about her. She saw me. And for half a second, her face changed. Surprise, not the good kind. Not the "oh wow, you're home early" kind. More like someone caught with their hand in a drawer they had no business being in. But then, just as quickly, she recovered. Zach, she said, almost with a smile. You're back already? She glanced at the counter, saw the food, and made a half-hearted gesture toward it. You brought Thai? That's sweet. Her tone was light, but her voice had a tightness to it. That strained, performative warmth people use when they're trying to control a narrative. I thought you were coming home tomorrow, she added, pulling out a fork and acting like nothing was out of place. I said, watching her closely. Car trouble. She nodded. Well, that *CKs. No mention of the man downstairs. No sound of the basement door shutting behind her. Just a subtle shift in the way she avoided my eyes. I asked, careful not to raise my voice, what were you doing down there? She looked at me for a beat too long. Oh, my colleague Mark. He's going through something, like a bad breakup, and he needed someone to talk to. I told him to swing by for a bit, just to talk. It's been a rough week for him. She shrugged like that explained everything. Like it wasn't 2:45 a.m. on a weeknight and she hadn't just been whispering in the dark with another man in a part of the house we never used. And you were watching a movie? I asked. Yeah, just something to distract him. I think I fell asleep for a bit down there. Didn't expect you home yet. I nodded. Slowly. Said nothing. She looked at me again, her expression hard to read. For a moment, I wondered if she was going to come clean. If some part of her knew the lie wasn't sticking. But she just said, I'm going to bed. You coming? I didn't answer. I sat in that kitchen, surrounded by the scent of takeout and the sinking weight of doubt, and I thought, this is how it begins. Not with shouting. Not with slammed doors. But with a sentence you were never meant to hear and the silence that follows it. I stayed in that chair long after she went upstairs. The food went cold. The light in the basement flicked off eventually. I didn't sleep that night. And I knew something had shifted in a way that couldn't be undone. I didn't go to work the next day. I called in sick, citing the flu. It was easier than explaining I was unraveling from the inside out. Laura moved through the house like everything was normal, like nothing happened in our basement at 2:30 in the morning, like I hadn't heard her voice soften for someone else. She didn't ask why I stayed home. She poured coffee, hummed while she got dressed, even joked about the weather. I watched her from across the kitchen, trying to spot what was different. But she wore the same face she always had. That somehow made it worse. She kissed me on the cheek before leaving, a quick, perfunctory thing. The same kiss she'd given me every weekday for years. Except now I wasn't sure who it was really meant for. When the door closed behind her, I stood there for a long time. Just breathing. Just thinking. My brain kept replaying that moment on the stairs. Her laugh. That line, you always make me feel more seen than he ever has. I didn't even know what that meant. Seen? Was I not seeing her? I used to think we had a good thing, not flashy, but solid. We'd been together for 8 years, married for 6. We didn't fight much. We took trips when we could afford to. We had inside jokes. I'd bought her those novelty socks with cats doing yoga poses last Christmas, and she actually wore them. I didn't think we were broken. But when I started looking back, really thinking, the cracks were there. I just hadn't wanted to admit it. It started with the jogging. Laura was never one for cardio. She used to say, if I'm running, it means something's chasing me. But suddenly, this past fall, she became obsessed with it. She bought running shoes that cost more than my first car, a fitness tracker, and bright compression tights she used to make fun of. She'd leave just after dawn and come back glowing, flushed cheeks and hair pulled back in a way that looked different. I offered to join once or twice. We used to walk trails together, but she turned me down each time with some excuse. It's my alone time, she'd say. Helps me clear my head. Then came the perfume. She started wearing this designer scent I didn't recognize. Something floral but expensive with a kind of sharpness that lingered in the air after she passed. Not for date nights, no, she wore it on weekday mornings. Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. I asked about it once, offhandedly, and she said her friend Rachel had gifted it to her as a just-because thing. But Rachel's not the kind of person who drops $200 on fragrance. And her phone. That was the other thing. Always on silent. Always face down. She'd pick it up, thumb through a few things, smile the kind of small, private smile people make when they're in on a secret, then lock the screen and tuck it away. Once, while she was cooking, a message flashed across the top: Mark. Just a name, no last name. No emoji, no preview of the text. She glanced at it and swiped it away like she'd seen a spider on the screen. I asked who Mark was. She said, oh, someone from the office, and changed the subject before I could push. The thing is, when you love someone, really love them, you give them the benefit of the doubt. Over and over. You fill in blanks with trust. You explain things away because the alternative is unbearable. You don't want to be the guy who snoops, who doubts, who keeps score. So I didn't. I chose not to see. But after that night, everything looked different. I went over the past few months like a detective at a crime scene I'd lived in. The missed calls. The sudden interest in girls' nights she never used to care about. The out-of-town team-building retreats that didn't show up on her company's internal calendar. Even the way she touched me had changed. It used to be instinctual, a hand on my chest as she passed me in the hall, a foot brushing against mine in bed. That disappeared slowly. Gradually. Like heat bleeding from a room you don't realize is getting colder until your breath fogs. I started noticing how she'd check her reflection in the mirror more often, not in that casual, did I get spinach in my teeth way, but more deliberate. Posing. Adjusting. Smiling to herself. And when I asked her what she was thinking about, she'd just say nothing with a tone that warned me not to ask again. The hardest part wasn't the suspicion, it was the growing awareness that I had been optional in my own marriage for a while. That day, with the house to myself, I did something I never thought I'd do. I searched. I started small, her laptop. We'd always shared a password. It still worked. Her browsing history was mostly clean, but the cookies told a different story. Hotel aggregator sites, fitness forums, articles like 10 tips to keep a relationship a secret. She deleted messages, but not everything. There were traces. A Google search for boutique hotels Boulder weekend had been made 2 nights before I left for Denver. A credit card statement, digital but overlooked, showed a transaction from Wilcrest Suites. I didn't know the place, so I looked it up. High-end. Cozy. The kind of place with fireplaces in the rooms and privacy guaranteed in their ad copy. I felt sick. I didn't know what I was hoping to find. A rational explanation? A mistake? Proof that I was just paranoid? But with every click, every uncovered detail, I realized this wasn't paranoia. This was history. My history. Just not the version I thought I was living. When Laura came home that evening, she acted like it was any other day. Told me about some team meeting that ran long. Asked if I wanted to watch The Bear, which she usually claimed was too intense for her. She even offered to rub my shoulders, something she hadn't done in months. Like she sensed I was drifting. I let her. I let her rub my shoulders while I sat frozen, quiet, disconnected from my own skin. Part of me still wanted to believe she loved me. That this was a phase. A mistake. But another part, a growing, louder part, realized something even scarier. She might have loved me. Once. But love isn't a shield. It doesn't protect you from choices. And people can love you and still hurt you in ways you'll never forget. I didn't sleep again that night. She curled into me like she used to, but her breathing was shallow, uneven. Like she was pretending to sleep. Maybe I was too. Around 4 a.m. I got out of bed, went into the office, and sat at my desk. I stared at our wedding photo, the one in the silver frame. She had that same laugh in the photo. The one I heard in the basement. Back then, it was for me. Now, I wasn't so sure. There's a difference between knowing something and proving it. The first messes with your head, the second rips out your heart. I lived in that space between the two for days, a kind of emotional purgatory, constantly swinging between suspicion and self-doubt. It was like trying to hold onto smoke. But eventually, the need for clarity won out. I told myself it wasn't revenge. It wasn't even anger, not yet. I needed facts, hard, undeniable evidence that I wasn't imagining this, that I wasn't going crazy or projecting fears onto her because I was too tired or too insecure to trust. So I crossed the line I'd been avoiding. I installed monitoring software on her laptop. It was subtle, something I found online that tracked browser activity, login times, and GPS pings when her phone synced via Bluetooth. It wouldn't give me full access to her messages, but it would show me patterns. And in a marriage that was starting to feel like a riddle with no answer, I was desperate for patterns. At first, it was uneventful. Google Docs, Slack notifications, Spotify playlists. But then I saw it. A browser session opened around 11:45 p.m. on a Thursday night, the same week as my Denver trip. She'd been out late, claiming it was a girls' night for a coworker's birthday. The tracker showed she used her maiden name to book a room at a boutique hotel downtown. She'd even toggled private browsing, probably thinking it would erase the record. But the system logged it anyway. Hotel Wilcrest. Room 312. Booked for one night, under the name Laura Jameson, a name she hadn't used since our wedding 6 years ago. My stomach dropped when I read it. That wasn't just sneaky. That was strategic. She knew what she was doing. I cross-checked the timeline. She left the house around 6:45 p.m. wearing that green dress, the one I hadn't seen before, the one that hugged her like it was tailored. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "Don't wait up." She said it lightly, like a joke. Like she knew I'd be too trusting to question it. I pulled up her Uber history from a shared family account she forgot was still linked to my email. The drop-off matched the hotel. Then came a food delivery from a restaurant 2 blocks away, ordered to the hotel under her same alias. It was all there. Clean. Precise. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I got in my car and drove downtown, parking across from the Wilcrest like I was casing a job. The street was quiet, dimly lit, with snow collecting in soft drifts along the curbs. I didn't even know what I was hoping to see. Maybe just a glimpse of the truth I already felt in my bones. And then they stepped out. She exited the hotel lobby around 11:30 p.m., arm looped through as like it was second nature. Mark. I knew it was him, though I'd never seen his face until that moment. Tall, clean-shaven, confident in a way that broadcasted ownership. He wasn't looking around nervously. He wasn't sneaking. He walked beside her like they'd done this 100 times. She wore that same green dress with a long coat draped over her shoulders. Not zipped? Not bundled. Just hanging open like she didn't need the warmth. Like he was the warmth. They paused near the curb, laughing. I couldn't hear them from across the street, but I could see the way she touched his arm. The way he leaned in when she said something. The familiarity between them was louder than any words. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. I stayed hidden in my car. My fingers were clenched around the steering wheel so hard they ached. But I didn't move. Didn't call out. Didn't charge across the street like in the movies. Because this wasn't a movie. This was my life. And I needed to see all of it. Eventually, they called another Uber. I watched them get in, still close, still laughing. And then they were gone. I sat in the car for a long time after that. The cold crept through the windows, but I didn't turn the heat on. I stared at the empty sidewalk where they'd stood, where we should have stood, me and Laura, once upon a time. Back at home, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of her bed watching her breathe. She came in later, claimed she was exhausted from all the girl talk. Her makeup was perfect. Her lie was cleaner than her conscience. I asked nothing. Said nothing. I just nodded and let her crawl into bed beside me. And I stared at the ceiling, wondering how many times this had happened. How many nights I'd fallen asleep while she was somewhere else, physically or emotionally. The next morning, I got up early and printed everything. Hotel receipts. Uber logs. A snapshot*T of her hotel confirmation. I bookmarked the tracker page and saved the screenshot*TS to a thumb drive. It wasn't about exposing her yet, it was about reclaiming reality for myself. Saying, this happened. You're not imagining this. She came downstairs humming. Made coffee. Scrolled her phone with a small smile playing on her lips. That smile used to be for me. I watched her from across the room and something inside me shifted. Not rage, not yet. But a quiet resolve. I was done explaining away what didn't make sense. Done rewriting her behavior to make it fit the story I wanted to believe. She asked if I wanted eggs. I told her no, I was fine. She smiled. Suit yourself. I sat there memorizing her face. Not because I missed her, but because I was starting to realize she wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she hadn't been for a long time. That night, she texted from work, said she'd be staying late to finish a proposal. She even attached a screenshot*T of a spreadsheet like she needed to prove something unasked. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I already had the proof. And nothing she could say would make it untrue. There's a specific kind of silence that settles over a person when they're past the point of being angry. It's not peace, not yet, but something colder. Still. Like the air right before a snowfall. That's where I was in the days after I followed Laura to the hotel. Not yelling. Not confronting. Just waiting. She thought I didn't know. That was the part that stung the most. Not just the betrayal, but the arrogance of it, the way she came home smiling, folding laundry, talking about some all-staff mixer coming up for New Year's. She said it like it was nothing. Just another corporate party with wine, appetizers, and polite laughter. Just another event she had to go to. I played dumb. Told her I might spend the night watching the college football games. She barely nodded. She was already too busy planning her outfit. I started planning something else. I didn't want drama. I didn't want shouting in front of a crowd. But I wanted her to see. I wanted her to feel it, even if just for a second, that drop in the gut when the world shifts under your feet. The same way I had felt it on the stairs that night. I wanted her to know that I wasn't blind anymore. The party was held at the Ridgeview Hotel ballroom, the same place we'd once gone to for a friend's wedding. I remember dancing with her under those same chandeliers years ago, thinking to myself, this is it. This is the woman I'll grow old with. Funny how the same places can feel like time capsules and burial grounds depending on what you walk in carrying. She didn't know I was coming. She left around 7 p.m., looking flawless in a wine-red dress that hugged every inch of her like it had been stitched to her skin. Gold earrings, heels, a clutch purse I'd given her for our anniversary. She blew me a kiss on the way out. It landed somewhere far short of me. An hour later, I showed up in a charcoal suit I hadn't worn since my sister's wedding. I hadn't RSVP'd. Didn't need to. The guy at the front desk waved me through with a smile. Enjoy the party. I thanked him quietly and stepped into the ballroom. The place was dressed in twinkle lights and fake pine garland. Jazz floated through the speakers, and the air smelled faintly of champagne and expensive cologne. I moved slowly through the crowd, scanning faces. And there she was, near the bar, laughing, leaning into him, Mark, with that familiar, easy warmth she used to give to me. His hand rested at the small of her back like it belonged there. like it had been there 100 times before. They weren't hiding, not even a little. She sipped from a glass of champagne and smiled up at him like the whole room didn't exist. She didn't see me approach. Not at first. I moved quietly through the crowd, threading between clusters of coworkers and couples. I stopped just short of them, close enough to hear her laugh again, close enough to see the moment her hand brushed his chest. That's when I pulled the ring from my pocket, my wedding ring, still faintly imprinted with the sweat of the day. I walked up to the bar, not more than a few steps from them. I ordered a glass of whatever champagne they were serving. When the bartender handed it to me, I held it for a moment, stared at it. Then, slowly, I dropped the ring into the glass. It clinked once against the side before sinking to the bottom. I walked over to her, calm as I'd ever been. She still hadn't noticed me, so I reached out and offered her the glass. "For you," I said. She turned toward me, and her face changed. Not slowly, instantly, like a switch flipped. Shock, recognition, and something deeper, panic. She looked at the glass in my hand, then back at me. And for a second, it felt like the entire room froze. She didn't say a word, just stared. I offered a small, cold smile. "You forgot something." Her hand trembled slightly as she took the glass. She looked down, saw the ring glinting at the bottom, and for the first time in weeks I saw something crack in her. The color drained from her face. Her mouth opened slightly, like she was about to say my name, but nothing came out. Mark looked confused. He looked between us, clearly piecing things together in real time. I didn't even glance at him. That moment was for her. I didn't make a scene. I didn't yell. I didn't throw a drink or accuse her in front of 100 people. I just turned and walked away. Slow, deliberate steps. Past strangers holding flutes and finger foods. Past the coat check girl who gave me a sympathetic look. Past the doorman who didn't say a word as I left. I got in my car and sat behind the wheel, hands shaking. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. It wasn't revenge. It was a cold, hollow finality, like someone had slammed the last page of a book shut. I drove home in silence, headlights cutting through the snow as it started to fall. The house was dark when I got there, still, familiar in a way that hurt more than it comforted. I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the spot where she usually left her keys. She didn't come home for hours. When she finally walked through the door, she didn't say a word at first, just stood there, holding her shoes in her hands, eyes red-rimmed and watery. Her hair was falling out of its clip. She looked smaller somehow, shrunk. "Zach," she whispered. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer, just looked at her. Not with anger, just absence. Whatever had been there before was gone. She moved to sit down across from me. I stood up instead. "I know everything," I said quietly. "Don't lie." She started to speak, but I held up a hand. "Not tonight." Her mouth closed, her shoulders slumped. She didn't fight me, didn't scream or spin stories. She just nodded slowly, like someone bracing for impact. And then she walked upstairs, alone. I stayed at the table. I think I sat there until the sun started to come up, the light turning the edges of the room gold. That ring, my wedding ring, was somewhere in a champagne flute at the Ridgeview Hotel, and for the first time, I didn't want it back. She didn't speak when she came downstairs the next morning. No good morning, no explanation, no half-baked excuse. Just silence, thick and pressing. She moved like she was afraid to disturb the air between us, like one wrong word might tip the whole house over. I was already dressed, sitting at the dining table with a folder beside me. Inside, everything. Screenshot *TS of her messages, a printout of her hotel reservation, bank statements, Uber logs, all the things I shouldn't have had to collect, but did. Proof not of infidelity alone, but of erosion. Emotional decay. She poured herself coffee. I didn't say anything. Eventually, she sat across from me, fingers curled tightly around the mug. Her nails, painted a soft pink, were chipped at the edges. She stared down into the drink like it could give her the words she couldn't find. Finally, she spoke. "How long have you known?" I looked at her for a moment. "Since the night I came home early." Her lips parted slightly, and I saw the weight of it hit her, that everything since then had been performed in front of someone who already knew the script. She looked down. You didn't say anything. No, I said. I watched. And I had. I watched her lie, smile, laugh at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. I watched her sneak back into our bed at night and pretend nothing was wrong. I watched the gap between us grow until I couldn't reach her anymore. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said quietly. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictably scripted. You didn't mean to book a hotel under your maiden name? You didn't mean to lie for weeks? What part of this wasn't on purpose, Laura? Her eyes welled. I didn't think you'd notice. You were always working. You were somewhere else. Ah, there it was, the shift. The subtle redirection of blame. I was working late to keep us afloat, to pay off the second mortgage we took so she could start her interior design business. The same business she claimed made her feel alive again. The same business that gave her the freedom to see Mark in the middle of the day without suspicion. I wasn't somewhere else, I said. I was here. Every day. I showed up. You just stopped seeing me. She opened her mouth, closed it again. I was lonely. So was I. And I had been. But my version of lonely didn't include someone else's hands. Mine meant staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. wondering why the woman lying next to me felt so far away. It meant picking up takeout alone and hoping it would count as quality time. It meant asking how her day was and getting a 2-syllable answer while she texted someone else under the table. I'm sorry, she said. I nodded. Me too. But apologies don't vacuum up the debris. They don't rewind the hotel doors or erase the lies. They don't restore the flicker in someone's eyes after it's been doused in disappointment. She asked if I was leaving. I shook my head. No, I said. I'm not the one who left. She didn't respond. Just sat there, staring into the mug like it might warm her from the inside out. I think part of her hoped for a fight. Something big and loud. Something that would give her a reason to call me cruel or unreasonable, something she could tell her friends to make the story more palatable. But I didn't give her that. I didn't want rage. I wanted clarity. And I had it now. Later that night, I opened the closet and pulled out a duffel bag. I started removing her things, not to throw them out, not in a fit of anger, but methodically. With finality. Her sweaters. Her running shoes. Her folded yoga pants and that dark green dress I'd never seen until I watched her walk into a hotel wearing it. She stood in the doorway watching. You're packing my stuff? I didn't look at her. Just making room. For what? For air. That's what I needed more than anything, space to breathe. The house had become a museum of false comfort. Every room carried echoes I couldn't ignore. The throw pillows she ordered from that catalog. The wine glasses we'd bought in Napa. The coffee ring on the kitchen island from her favorite mug. All of it haunted. She said she didn't know where she would go. I told her that wasn't my problem anymore. I left the folder on the coffee table. Her name was written on a post-it. Inside was everything I'd gathered. No threats. No angry notes. Just facts. And my wedding ring taped gently to the last page. She picked it up when I wasn't looking. I saw the corner of her eye twitch when she flipped through the evidence. Her face broke open, then closed again. I didn't speak. I didn't comfort her. I wasn't her comfort anymore. That night, we didn't sleep in the same bed. She took the guest room. I didn't ask. I just watched her walk away carrying a glass of water and some blankets like a house guest who had overstayed her welcome. It was quiet in the master bedroom. Too quiet. I lay on top of the covers, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun slow circles, making the room feel like it was moving even though everything else had stopped. The next morning, her car was gone. The house felt different. Lighter. Emptier in a way that was both relieving and deeply, deeply sad. She left a note on the kitchen table. One line. I'm sorry. I'll come back for the rest. I folded it once and threw it into the trash without reading it again. Later, I opened her drawer in the bathroom and found it still full: eyeliner, moisturizer, a bottle of perfume with a name I couldn't pronounce. The same one she wore on weekday mornings when she claimed she had meetings. I closed the drawer carefully. It didn't matter anymore. The silence was different now. Not just the absence of her voice, but the absence of pretending. Of excuses. Of rehearsed smiles and text alerts hidden behind a downward phone screen. I took the afternoon off work. Sat in the backyard with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders and watched the wind push through the pine trees. I listened to the stillness. The real kind. Not the forced kind we'd been living in. And I thought, this is what ending sounds like. It doesn't come with screaming or slamming doors. It comes with a champagne glass. A folder. A quiet goodnight. A closet half empty and a coffee table that no longer belongs to two people. It comes with knowing. Not hoping. Not wondering. Knowing.